Welcome back to Linh Talks Tech. And today I just came back from SAP Sapphire 2026, Orlando, Florida. And this is a good time for a recap. So we want to go diving into the biggest theme from this year's Sapphire. You know, the RISE theme is still front and center, but SAP major announcement is around the business AI platform. But I will start with the RISE. You can see I have a screen here, a snapshot from there. So I will go through some of the images just to give you a glimpse of what was there and why RISE is actually the topic today. SAP Sapphire 2026, AI orchestration, and the rise of the autonomous operation. So that's why I put RISE there as the first image. So we started on Monday with the SAP Partner Summit and your Christian client there. So most of what the public got on the day one of the conference was actually reviewed to partners the day before. So on keynote speaking, we got a lot of the announcement around the AI orchestration and automated operations mean that SAP Enterprise, SAP Landscape now. So beneath all that marketing messages, there's very important architectural shift happening. SAP is no longer positioning itself as an ERP company. It's positioning itself as an AI-powered enterprise operating system. And that means the conversation is rapidly moving away from transactional systems, application silos, data silos, and static operating models, right, towards more AI-driven orchestration, more autonomous workflows, intelligent agents, and predictive operations, and then eventually self-healing kind of enterprise environment. That is the autonomous operations platform that SAP talk about. And this is interestingly, IT-Conductor was founded in 2014 as the word says IT-Conductor, and orchestration has been part of our core mandate in terms of the operational efficiency model. So it's refreshing that finally SAP industry is coming around and talking a lot about orchestration as the core of the framework. But at the same time, we're going to dissect and say, there's still a massive gap between SAP's future state vision and the operational reality most customers are living in today. So I will go into more detail with that. Like for instance, SAP Enterprise is still mostly running still ECC or hybrid S4 environments, fragmented middleware, disconnected observability stacks, still running a lot of legacy job schedulers and siloed tools, including monitoring, change management, etc., and the manually coordinated operational process, whether it's business operation or IT operations. So today we're gonna unpack and discuss, what actually SAP announced in the Sapphire 2026 and what matters operationally versus what's still kind of, I'd say, more aspirational, where orchestration becomes a critical layer and why we think at IT-Conductor why observability is becoming the foundation to AI operations and how platforms like us fit directly into this autonomous operation future, right? So that's the operation of, autonomous enterprise that SAP is talking about. So let's get into it. I'm going to flip through the slideshow a little bit just to give you a glimpse. And, on the partner summit, as I say, they're talking about more on the AI apps, moving towards, landscape boundary, being able to create the more value in the modernizing. One of the announcement there is that you can leverage some of this capability today already while you are planning to migrate to RISE. Part of the commitment SAP is making is that if you commit to a future migration to RISE, you can leverage some of the capability now, even with the on-prem ERP or the older legacy S4 environment. And then you can focus on driving some of the agent-led migration, whether it's code migration, data migration towards the target platform. Is one of the slides I was shown. I guess SAP now is calling the SAP Autonomous Suite. So you don't have silos of BTP, and you have apps like supply chain, ERP, and then you have different apps. So they're part of what the autonomous enterprise is. So the agents and the apps, the data live together. There's not separate of like, hey, BTP separate, S4 separate, and then SEM and the other SAP NetSuite applications separate. to leverage the application data for AI use in terms of running an autonomous enterprise. Even BDC, Business Data Cloud, etc., is now visualized at the data layer, and then all of that drives the kind of generative SAP knowledge graphs that gives you the contextual execution for whatever the automation part is. So the part of Summit, again, the keynote opening was a lot of the autonomous enterprise. See this throughout the show floor. I can show you some of the images. SAP now, lets you pick the model, the Joule Studio 2.0, which will be released and free for use in June. They're getting the developers into building some of these agents using Joule Studio, and then you can also use the Joule kind of intelligent, or you can choose your own models as well. But we're talking about generating everything from requirement doc specifications down to generating the code, shrinking what used to be 2 days without what SAP is saying in traditional coding, requirements documentation down to in an hour or so using Joule. So that's one of the outcomes that we're going to look for. But here's the priority for partners. So for SAP and very emphasis on partners, we particularly are in the build partnership. So ISV providing independent software vendor platforms. And the autonomous suite is really to go into the whole scenario with SAP and customers into land, extend, and enhance for the customer benefit. And then the business AI platform is really to drive the innovation adoption. And then the specialization, as I said, we are improving by building on top, building alternative or integration as a partner for faster growth. And then also from a quality and scale, we have to SAP emphasize they cannot do this alone. They will require and need the partner community to build along and provide integration and customer adoption as part of the theme. So I was walking around PwC, had a lounge there, and enjoyed one of the Formula One premier SIs there, and they did a really good job at interaction. That's the shot of the convention center in Orlando Convention Center, and then we have Joule everywhere. You can see part of the theme at SAP this year is obviously you can see Joule being the centerpiece. All the displays are there, so they're really elevating to this now as part of the intelligent, the autonomous enterprise platform. And SAP is quick to, as the keynote said, the beginning of better SAP. So we will see whether this movement and how fast it will be before customer can realize this. But SAP do realize themselves they are transforming the company using AI as the autonomous enterprise and the business AI platform to be the beginning of better SAP. So there's a lot of graphics around this during the show. SAP was probably half or over half of the space in the show floor. And obviously the business AI platform theme was core to that whole messaging. See there. You can see also around things like the integration suite was very core to integrating application as part of this new platform push to be autonomous, where integration with internal SAP and also external applications are driven as part of the AI playbook. So it's core to data and governance and integration scenarios. So we have, and I walked around, saw various different booths. Interestingly, as I said, IT-Conductor, we talk about orchestration for many years, part of the SOAP platform, service orchestration automation platform. But now vendors, you start seeing, this is an example of DXC's booth where they had Orchestrate as like the first, your future, etc. Unify, right? More example, other vendors like Redwood, again, the leading agentic orchestration platform. So the word is now orchestrate, 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 right? And then SAP, obviously, talking about autonomous suite. You can't have an autonomous suite without orchestration, right? That's part of the core. So Joule sits in the center of that, but the autonomous suite include all those apps that we talked about. S4 is one of them, so that is part of the application. And then the agents will leverage that plus the data model and the data layer, things like BDC and like Business Data Cloud. All of that will be part of the automation and the new AI business platform. So you don't hear a lot about just BTP talking in separate terms. It's part of the whole playbook with the business AI platform. Again, we had Roger Federer actually in the last day. He was there at the show talking about, his successes and things like that. But you see a lot of these Joule display around the place. And at the end there was a celebration night, and it was very good. I was at the SAP sponsored the Walt Disney World. We went to the Magic Kingdom, and there was a lot of fun. Entire Sapphire crew were there for attendees, walking around and having a lot of places to visit, and also cap off with a concert at the end. We had the Dave Matthews Band there. Let me see if I can see. Oh, here it is. This is what I wanted to show. That was the concert right at the front of the castle there. But let's go back to a little bit more on the theme, and I'm going to just leave it on one of the slides. I guess we can talk about what does it mean being a better SAP. So getting into detail, the big theme of Sapphire, as I said, is AI everywhere, not just SAP, but all the partners and vendors. If there was one dominant message from Sapphire this year, it was this: SAP wants AI embedded into every operational layer of the enterprise, not just chat interfaces, not just co-pilots, but deeply integrated execution level AI, moving from chatbots and that kind of back and forth into real operational. And SAP claim now today they have, I think, 600 plus agents created to help everything streamlined from business operations, day-to-day business processes. So the centerpiece continues to be Joule, but the messaging evolved significantly this year. Last year was, here's SAP's AI assistant. Now they're excited to go, okay, here's SAP's orchestration agent framework for enterprise execution. So that's very different conversation as we had that last year. And SAP repeatedly emphasized AI agents, the workflow orchestration, cross-system automation, and then business process execution. So there was a lot of discussion around how Signavio, LeanIX increasingly becoming the core, kind of clean core modeling for creating these agents to help drive the autonomous enterprise. Also event-driven actions and then contextual. So you would see around the show floor a lot of contextual reasoning around AIs, bringing the data and the logic together to provide a contextual operation intelligence. That's important because enterprise do not actually need another co-pilot chatbot, right? They need something that is going to essentially systems that will coordinate actions, systems that will understand the dependencies, systems that can correlate, events and failures, systems that can automate the remediation. So whether it's a business data cleansing or something failed, you want to be able to automatically remediate in order for you to actually say that you're an autonomous enterprise, and the systems that can operate across fragmented enterprise landscapes. To be honest, like most SAP customers have lots of different integrations and disparate systems. So the operation across those borders are very important as well. This is where the conversation becomes more operational, because AI without orchestration is just an expensive kind of autocomplete, filling out stuff. But you need the orchestration to cross borders between agents, passing data, making things really useful to solve a complex workflow process, right? Also, right now, people are used to interacting with AI, and therefore you may not be getting into natively at the SAP GUI level or the Fiori. So they call it headless SAP or headless applications, because you can now get the data or even the data entry just through your common interface of like a chatbot, where you can tell it what to do. It will provide you the data. It can execute on your behalf and behind the scene integrate with other applications. So the real value of AI appears that we need to be able to detect, at least from an operation automation standpoint, correlate that information to decide, to execute, and to validate and continuously optimize that process. So that's the core topics, the beginning of the autonomous operations as we see it. In summary, I think some of the theme that was put forward, there's AI orchestration now is the real kind of battleground. And that theme was clear. One of the most important theme, right, was really the word orchestration. You see it everywhere, not just AI generation, but a large, not just the LLMs, because LLMs are coming up fast and furious. SAP is coming out with their own, everybody building something, and there's one fit for purpose LLM. But the core to it is the orchestration, because you can get multiple LLM to provide different intelligence and then the different context to execute at the individual activity or agent level. But you also need orchestration across all these agents to share data, to have memory. So SAP heavily emphasize the process orchestration layer. That's why they're bringing everything back to one giant business AI platform. They're not having data separated out from applications. And so the AI orchestration is emphasized, the data orchestration, the agent of coordination, right? And then the workflow automation between all of them, and the business event integration so that one can trigger the other to continue the whole workflow process. That's very important as well. And honestly, this is kind of it is a correct strategic direction we see, right? Because you can't get more complex without orchestration to bring it centrally core. But enterprise, are they ready to have this AI, right? Yes, they want it. You talk to everybody, everybody's like talking about it. They want it. They're not sure how to approach it, but they want it. But everybody is fearful of the lack of coordination and the lack of governance around execution of these. So the hardest problem in AI isn't generating content or what to do about certain things. The problem is connecting the systems, managing the dependencies, understanding the operational state. You got to be able to monitor and see, is this going exactly as planned? Maintaining the governance, validating the outcome, and then automating safely around that governance and the control, right? So the control plane is extremely critical for orchestration. So that requires the orchestration platform to be able to, do interesting for SAP customers. So the real result isn't tooling this, that. What can you do with AI today to make an impact for SAP customers, right? So most SAP landscapes, to be honest, if they've been live with SAP for, let's say, 5, 10, 20 years or more, they're not clean. Data is not clean, application, integration, etc. There are lots of border issues. There are deep dependencies. So customers may have ECC, S4, SuccessFactor, Ariba, Concur, and then all the other third-party SaaS apps running on multiple hyperscaler services, custom APIs, and then all the legacy middleware stuff, non-SAP databases, even the applications that run on Kubernetes environments, and then multiple observability platform, ticketing systems, etc. There's no single AI model, right, to magically can understand all of that. The operational intelligence that is required needs the telemetry to be correlated, needs to have a dependency mapping between all these applications and integration. So the event normalization as well, and runtime visibility into the whole stack, and the orchestration logic in order to make something useful and do it as the way it's designed in the workflow. This is why we see observability of an automation platform. It become very strategic. You can't do it without us first seeing the data, knowing that, and being in the right context, and having that key observability telemetry is key to that operation. We're talking about autonomous platform, kind of core theme at IT-Conductor, and operations become highly relevant when you understand the data and then contextualize before you deploy agents, and then coordinate across the agents as well, part of the overall problem solving. The future state architecture of SAP is kind of requires kind of operational context. Again, I say contextual and reasoning, have to have real-time visibility, event intelligence, and the execution of those orchestration. That's where automation platform can execute tasks on behalf, or the agent can execute that as part of the agentic playbook. So with the operational foundation, AI becomes, kind of blind automation if you're talking about agents doing things without some level of coordination and cooperation. And obviously, we don't want blind automation. That is a dangerous thing to do, right? Let's talk about what is emerging as the autonomous operation stack. So Sapphire made it clear this year, 2026, SAP is moving toward an autonomous enterprise model. Even if they don't always use that exact phrase, you can see that the direction through the combined emphasis on Joule, AI agents are part of that. And business data fabric, event, all of that, workflow orchestration, process automation, operation intelligence. You combine all these pieces together, what is the target architecture will look like. That's the core. So I think layer one is going to be the unit infrastructure visibility, unit SAP workload, kind of monitoring. You need API observability. You're going to need kind of a middleware health integration suite part of PTB. You're going to need the job monitoring. A lot of these AI will execute things like jobs, your cloud service visibility, business process, state awareness, and dependency mapping. Without all of this stuff, you can't really have an autonomous system, cannot make intelligent kind of decisions. This is where platforms like IT-Conductor can operate as part of the model. So let's continue on. I think we talk about like without telemetry, you don't have ability to orchestrate. Yeah, as the operational intelligence system, you need that ability to do the orchestration. So layer 2, we talk about correlation and operational context, because in open discussion with what SAP theme around orchestration, there's a lot of context, reasoning, because you can't just action without some reasoning and auditability, traceability. Contextual understanding is kind of system correlating the SAP application events like failures, a cloud platform, if you're having that degradation, the API latencies, all of this failed integration, infrastructure saturation, and all of the business process disruption can be a real issue when you're trying to have autonomous enterprise. That's kind of core to what we focus on. In this correlation layer becomes incredibly important for AI systems, and they need structural operational context. So the large language models alone are not going to be enough, because they don't understand what's happening in real time. They just have a context of, the intelligent layer, but the operational telemetry needs to be there to support it. Right? Require kind of accurate runtime signals that can be used to feed the agents. What else does it need? It needs layer 3, which is more on the orchestration and the decision engines. This is where orchestration enters. The system becomes a kind of coordinating the workflows, the remediations, the escalations, failover. So if you think before, during ERP and S4, depending on the background processing of jobs and data in terms of queues and integration, as well as the whole coordination. Now think about the workflow remediations to make sure that it continues to operate, so that data continues to flow, agents can operate, and then escalating issues that are causing perhaps bottlenecks or disruptions, and then failing over and retrying. So for instance, if you have multiple redundant infrastructures, it needs to be able to fail over, it needs to retry everything from, let's say, the cloud connector for data between S4 backend and the BTP layer, right? Needs to be able to fail over a cloud connector. It needs to be able to retry messaging, and also being able to scale the operations like provisioning servers on the fly, run automation playbooks, and address the operational requirements with real-time responses. So this is kind of operational nervous system. Before that, these foundational things that need to be in place for the orchestration platform. But the layer 4 is the AI-driven kind of autonomous action. So this is where finally AI begins to participate in the execution, and not just recommending stuff, but executing. Some examples may include automatically restarting failed integrations like BTP integration suite, iFlow, scaling services dynamically, rerouting workloads, and as well as suppressing alert storms so that you can focus on real problems, and then detecting anomaly patterns or some things around security. Perhaps there's anomaly detection, and there's kind of remediation of those issues, correlating those root causes, and then also predicting operational failures. There's cases where, for instance, if you had a lot of applications loaded on cloud-based Fiori environment in your work zone, and it's not loading because there's too many tiles, etc. You can almost always predict these failure points because of sizing, because of performance degradation, and then you have to initiate remediation, whether it's to size up or to reduce some of these tiles, or through the role configuration. These are considered to be part of the autonomous operation stuff that you need to detect the failure. And in reality, many enterprise will kind of reach this future through third-party operational platform long before SAP delivers fully kind of native end-to-end autonomy, because they can do it at the business layer, but operational layer requires a lot of innovation around keeping things smoothly operating. Right. Let's look about operational reality in terms of most SAP customers still face. A lot of customers who interact with they need some sense of realism, right, into the conversation, because they say, oh, great, we want all this AI, blah, blah, but the Sapphire stage presentations often describe more modernized cloud first enterprise architecture, right? That's not where most SAP customers live today. They have very large, complex environment that still need the effort of modernization. So this is why SAP realized that and said that we can introduce some of these gradually while you are on the roadmap to rise and modernization that may take, anywhere from 6 months to 3 years, right? So the operating reality is that many customers are not there yet, and they will struggle with fragmented IT systems for monitoring, for disconnected alerts, manual incident management, everything that you need to operate with today still in siloed operational systems, kind of legacy batch process that needs to be transformed into more real-time interactions, inconsistent automation that don't really scale well, and then incomplete visibility across your enterprise and hybrid systems, on-prem, remote, hybrid, multi-cloud, all of that. This is the critical issue. We see that AI orchestration is only as good as the operational data that is feeding it. If your monitoring is fragmented, you don't have telemetry good enough to scale your enterprise for the autonomous operation. If its telemetry is incomplete, you're not getting the whole picture and you might be acting on incomplete data. If your dependencies are still unknown between multiple components through the chain of the workflow, if your event streams are kind of noisy and you can't really do good signal detection as to a root cause analysis, like at the machine learning level, the AI can become unreliable, and then all corporations will not have the success they anticipate for that. So if it's unreliable, you will not trust it. So this is why we think that the observability is rapidly evolving from, nice to have monitoring, because there's monitoring platforms on there, to more of a mission critical AI infrastructure. Without that, you cannot have reliable AI delivery, right? Because with SAP, again, is bringing data and apps together to introduce the AI layer for the agentic age of orchestration for the business, autonomous business enterprise. And to do that well, you have to have mission AI ready infrastructure. So I think from an accuracy standpoint, the state awareness, AI need to know that. It has to have memory. It has to have trusted telemetry. And then the real-time kind of correlation, so agents can cooperate across different agents and be able to tell when there's an issue that exists in multiple components, not just in one area that AI agent may have visibility into. So that will introduce the operational confidence that we see for larger autonomous enterprise adoption. Platforms that focus on this, like us, become strategically important, and not because that they replace SAP. SAP still produce a lot of telemetry and the inside knowledge and the knowledge graphs, etc., but because they provide the runtime intelligence that SAP layer needs for AI orchestration, right? I think that's the core thing. So I already talked about where we fit. I feel confident after 12 years IT-Conductor talking about orchestration, where we fit into the SAP Sapphire 2026 vision. The announcements are highly relevant to what we're doing today, and every AI area and orchestration talks about the enterprise and possess mature operational visibility. You can't have that without that maturity. And most who are not need to be on this route in parallel to their business transformation and to the AI platform. For us, IT-Conductor's main mission is autonomous operations, right? That's the platform that we'll use to address these in parallel to the business AI platform that SAP talk about. That visibility has to cross boundaries between, classical legacy ECC and S4 system into BTP, into integration suite in cloud infrastructure, and then all the other SaaS applications, and then the middleware integrating in other intelligent layers, including MCP servers that do many different tooling and coordination, right, for the AI age. So that operational visibility is very relevant. And I think today, based on conversation with customers who have different tooling, that is very fragmented today. And they need to start thinking about moving forward to create a better framework to adopt this business AI platform. So again, back to contextual intelligence. Having one piece of data is not enough, and many agents can feed this. So the AI system requires that contextual operational understanding, not just isolated alert. And then that capability allows IT-Conductor, for instance, to help establish the dependency awareness. And then with the operational context, the service impact analysis of what does it mean when this thing happens, or what does it need in order to execute this whole workflow. And this requires the also cross-system visibility, not just what's inside of one system. That takes us to the next level where the autonomous operation require to be constantly in a self-healing mode, that once you are operating normal, you know what is normal and what is an anomaly, and how self-healing should work to become kind of the next area where you focus from moving from monitoring to automation to autonomous operations, right? Because we're already doing the monitoring, the automation in many aspects. Then the autonomous operations will require that next level where execution requires agentic workflow orchestration. And if companies are already used to the process orchestration, the operational kind of automation capabilities are kind of well positioned for this transition. But what I want to touch on is also customers who are not yet in that SAP kind of ideal architecture. How to get there is critically important. Of course, migration strategies, data, and consolidations of landscape. The AI messaging really heavily based on BTP, modern S4 releases. And again, with Joule Studio 2.0, there's a lot of things that SAP can help in modernizing your application using built-in capability around process mining like Signavio, LeanIX to design the target workflow for business transformation. And to get to that state does require enterprise to adopt this model, right? And it's just not possible without improving the architecture. From an operational intelligent level, IT-Conductor can provide this across current state environments today. So we are already managing lots of ECC and old S4 releases running on hybrid landscape, multiple hyperscalers, non-SAP infrastructure as well, and a mixed operating of tools, so we can bring all that together. So important to talk about also what is the contrarian take on SAP AI vision, right? So you have to be kind of skeptical. There's many marketing announcements, but it depends on the operational maturity most customers don't yet have today. So that's why I'm skeptical on some parts where the uncomfortable reality is that most customers don't have the ability today to capture this mind share and say, okay, we're going to adopt this. Moving faster than enterprises are ready for everything from security, architecture, scalability, teams, expertise, all that. Really, SAP 2026 Sapphire really have highlighted the gap very clearly between organizations. Many customers are still lacking this unified kind of observability, automation layer, the dependency between different applications and the mapping of that provide operational orchestration capability. And the autonomous enterprise require this kind of reliable AI-ready operational data level for IT operations automation. So I think for the industry, the conversation is really jumping forward into autonomous AI agents creates a risk without that level of maturity at the operation level for IT, right? So the poorly governed processes or automation enterprise scale can only go forward and be successful when you take a handle on how you can remediate today across its unstable environment with security issues. If you're not patching, you're not staying compliant, up to date, and then dealing with our solution for platform failures or high availability, redundancy, and be able to remediate smaller issues before they become more impactful. The ones we think that are going to benefit from the new business AI platform is the one in, I think, next 5 years of the enterprises that can adopt this kind of operational discipline around observability, orchestration framework, the trusted telemetry, and then the control plane to actually control the automation, whatever you adopt in terms of architecture. So the winners are likely going to be the companies that quietly invest in this kind of operational intelligence before everyone else realize that it really is matter. So let's summarize up some of my closing thought on SAP Sapphire 2026. It's quite interesting, quite surprising. I think it's exciting for those that want to adopt the innovative future. It's aggressively moving, and SAP is changing as a company. It envisions itself to be the future in the AI-driven business enterprise, right? So orchestrated future. I do believe in orchestration at the core, whether it's on business side, operation side. But the most important story may be not the AI assistant itself, as we know that, it will be the operational architecture or infrastructure required to make autonomous business operation enterprise ready and useful. Because AI execution without observability becomes very dangerous. AI orchestration, again, without that kind of operational context becomes kind of unreliable. And you need that context, you need that data, you need that reasoning. And then the autonomous systems without a governance become kind of operational liability. So yeah, Fortune 100, 500, 1,000 company, a public company, you need the ability to be auditable, traceable, and having that governance. And that's why the operational intelligence platforms become strategically important or critical. It's not a side tool, it is a requirement. But the foundation structure, infrastructure for the autonomous enterprise, that's exactly what we're focusing on. And in order to drive the innovation at the AI level, you need that orchestration, the observability, the intelligence or automation as part of the control plane. And I think autonomous operation really rhymes with us. And the future AI connect enterprise execution for the business requires that autonomous operation and down in the technical level, right? I think now is the time to build that layer in order to be ready for the business AI that SAP is talking about. I really want to thank you for tuning in and listening to the Linh Talks Tech podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, and also many technical topics that I write about. And upcoming series, we're going to talk about kind of AI operations in SAP landscape. Lots of things around also security, cyber resiliency for SAP operations and automation. And then talk about the BTP observability, the integration challenges around that to make end-to-end business workflow work well. And then the autonomous remediation where there are issues to keep it humming along. Talking about real world scenarios and then SAP roadmap as well as the enterprise operational reality. Okay, then see you next time.